So good morning, everyone. I call this hearing to order. My name is Brian Halstead. I'm Deputy Commissioner of Education for the state of Nebraska, and I'll be the presiding officer conducting the hearings virtually this morning, January 3rd, 2024, using Zoom to get testimony on the proposed adoption of Title 92 Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 58, Regulations for Security-Related Infrastructure Grants, and proposed revisions to Title 92 Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 59, Regulations for School Health and Safety. The legal notice of hearing was published in the Omaha World Herald on December 2nd, 2023. The hearing for each rule will be held separately in order, as I've stated. To begin the hearing on each rule, a Nebraska Department of Education staff member will describe and explain the proposed rule or revisions to the rule. This will be followed by testimony by interested persons. Each person presenting written or oral testimony is requested to A, state and spell your first and last name and provide a general indication of where you live, such as city, county, school district. State a concise suggestion or recommendation of what action you'd like the board to take, and state the rationale or reasons for your recommendations. You may reinforce, but please refrain from repeating previous testimony. Each person testifying will be limited to 5 minutes. If additional time is needed, it may be provided at the discretion of me, the hearing official. At the conclusion of all testimony from interested persons, the Nebraska Department of Education staff member who opened on the rule will have the opportunity to respond to the testimony presented today, which will conclude the testimony for each of the rule hearings we're conducting. The testimony presented will be recorded, and the audio recording will be made available to the State Board of Education and the public via YouTube at the time the board considers adoption of the rule later this week. All written testimony must be submitted to me, the hearing official, prior to 12 noon today, Central Standard Time, in order to be made part of the record of this hearing. The email for submitting written comments is nde.rulehearing@nebraska.gov. This email address may also be found on the department's website at education.ne.gov by following the rules and regulations link on the right side of the page to the public notices of the upcoming rule hearings. At this time, we'll begin the hearing on Rule 58, Regulations for Security-Related Infrastructure Grants, with Dr. Zaina Brida from the Department of Education describing and explaining the proposed rule. Dr. Brida, you may begin.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Halstead. Good morning, everyone. My name is Zaina Brida, and I'm the Equity Officer and Administrator for the Office of Coordinated Student Support Services at the Nebraska Department of Education. The following is a summary of proposed new Title 92 Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 58, Regulation for Security-Related Infrastructure Grants. First, Section 001, the purpose of the proposed rule for the security-related infrastructure grant is to, 1, provide guidance and clarity on the eligibility criteria, application process, and the type of project that will be funded. 2, ensure the grant funds are distributed fairly and equitably among eligible schools and institutions. And 3, support the administration of the security-related infrastructure grant program according to the Administrative Procedure Act. Next, Section 002.04, the definition of contract for security-related infrastructure. means a contract between an educational service unit and a non-public school located within the boundaries of the educational services unit, in which the educational services unit services consideration from the non-public school in exchange for assistance from the educational service unit for a security-related infrastructure project benefiting the student of the non-public schools. 002.08, the definition of qualifying project means the purchases, installations, or improvement of specified items related to security. This serves to clearly outline the specific purposes for which the grant funds can be used, ensuring that the proposed project align with the intended goals of the grant program. Section 003, school district can apply on behalf of all schools within the district. Educational service units that have security-related contract with non-public schools can also apply for grant to support each contract. Section 004.01, request for proposal. The department will issue a request for proposals for a new or expansion grant for school safety and security program during years in which grant funds are available. 004.02 proposal requirement include a need assessment survey, a stakeholder engagement, data regarding student in poverty, a program narrative containing specified elements. The requirement element in the program narrative include timeline, sustainability plan, and evaluation plan. Next, section 005.01, scoring panel. The commissioner will select 9 individuals knowledgeable in school safety and security to serve on the scoring panel. 005.02, distribution of award amount. Each proposal that meets the minimum qualification will result in a base grant award of $2,000 for each school. The remainder of the available funds after the awarding of the base grant will be awarded on a competitive basis. 005.03, final determination. The commissioner will make a final determination of the awarding of the grant based on the recommendation of the scoring panel and requirement of Nebraska Revised Statute 79-3108 and of this chapter. Section 006.03, duration of the funding. Any grant funds awarded pursuant to this chapter must be obligated within 1 year of the date the funds were received by the school district or educational services units or be returned to the department. Section 008.01, reporting requirement. On or before December 1st of each calendar year that grants are issued pursuant to this chapter, the department will provide a report to the clerk of the legislature. Finally, Appendix A. This section includes 2 sets of need assessment questions. The initial set consists of 26 questions requiring a yes or no responses, while the second set consists of 4 questions that necessitate short answers. This concludes my summary of Rule 58. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. Is there anyone wishing to testify or provide comments on Title 92 Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 58? If there are, please raise your hand using that in the chat feature or visually show your hand raised in the video. So Dr. Skreda, I am going to recognize you for 5 minutes. Please go forward by giving us your name and whom you represent, and then your comments.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is John Skretta. That's Johnskretta, and I'm the administrator at Educational Service Unit 6. We're headquartered in Milford and serving 16 member public school districts, as well as supporting another 10 non-public schools that are within our area by serving as a liaison for important state and regional level communication to support their efforts. I'm providing testimony this morning in support of the adoption of the draft Rule 58 as presented, regulations for security-related infrastructure grants. The context and background of Rule 58 stems from the adoption of what was initially proposed in the legislature as LB 516 by Senator Walz. Senator Walz was the Education Committee chair when she wisely convened a statewide school safety task force to make recommendations around enhancements to school security across our state. The adopted statute within the Education Committee Omnibus Bill last session, LB 705, provides a substantial and much needed commitment of state level resources to supporting these security related infrastructure grants in schools. It was the clear legislative intent of our policymakers to ensure that non-public schools also be able to benefit from these resources as well as public institutions. And a common sense means of ensuring eligibility is for the ESU to serve as a fiscal agent and contractor to support the needs of the non-publics who wish to apply for these competitive grants. And I should mention here the intersection with another rule, which would be Rule 84 for educational service units, which notes under, that's Title 92, Chapter 84, 001.07 contract services. Educational service units may contract to provide services to non-public school systems. So this is consistent with that precedent that already exists in Rule 84. Rule 58 is consistent with and reflective of substantial stakeholder input representing a wide range of perspectives on school safety. I believe it contains in comprehensive fashion the important details and specifics that will allow for successful implementation of these state grants to be overseen and awarded by the NDE. The list of qualifying projects is laid out in 002.08 and reflects current knowledge of best practices and research proven practices. This list will help schools hone in on their key priorities and make the best high impact investments to support and strengthen school security and infrastructure across our schools. Of particular interest also is the appendix that includes needs assessment questions. We know that will be essential for schools to examine, explore, and reflect upon in assembling their grant applications should they choose to pursue this funding. ESUs in Nebraska look forward to the forthcoming RFP for these expansion grants for school safety and security programming. We're eager to be a supportive partner in the process. We commend our colleagues at NDE on the careful and comprehensive development of Rule 58. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Skreda. David Patton, you are recognized. You have 5 minutes. Please give us your name and spell it and the organization or where you represent.
Okay, thank you. I'm David Patton, P-A-T-T-O-N. I am the superintendent of schools in Auburn, at Auburn Public Schools in Auburn, Nebraska. And I'm here today to provide testimony and support for accepting the draft Rule 58. The last several years, we have seen an increase in parent, staff, and student concerns regarding school building safety. This rule will provide district personnel the opportunity to hear from our stakeholders to better understand and clarify their concerns. This will provide transparency within our communities by doing so. It would also allow us the opportunity to visit with local law enforcement safety personnel to better understand what they see as needs in our schools. School officials are not experts in safety and security. The rule contains best practices for school personnel to review and learn from. Having the voice of local experts will allow us the opportunity to better define our needs, target our funds toward those things that will best improve the safety of our buildings. The needs assessment contained within the rule will allow us to better develop a comprehensive security plan that will allow us to utilize our funds in such a way to be more fiscally responsible. Many of us in schools use as much of our local funds as possible to address security needs, but this approach is haphazard and fragmented. Having additional funds will free up local funds for other district needs, such as instruction. The cost associated with door sensors, security film, security camera servers are high, and funds taken from instruction and other needs. In closing, I feel Rule 58 is an opportunity for our districts to develop a comprehensive plan that is informed and educated by best practices, provides an opportunity for school districts to apply for and get funds desperately needed for security, while preserving as much local funds for instruction as possible. Process for gaining the funds and how the grants are awarded is specific and fair, in my opinion. That concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Tom Benzer, you are recognized. You have 5 minutes. Again, give us your name, spell your name, and any organization or where you're located.
We represent the Catholic schools across the state of Nebraska on public policy matters. And so just want to, without repeating, just want to echo a lot of what John said and Dave said already about the history behind this development and the importance of the collaboration, with the leadership of Senator Walz on this issue, and the importance of this to schools and ultimately, as the rule states, to the benefit of students, or whether a child is in a public school or a non-public school setting, they deserve the benefit of every opportunity to have a safe school as possible. So we really appreciate that underlying ultimate benefit to the student and in the way that the rule articulates that. And of course, we're supportive of the rule as it's written. Just wanted to raise a couple just small things, kind of more on the sides of concerns, just to put them out there on the record. Just with the rule permitting sort of a discretion of ESUs to contract with and act on behalf of the non-public schools. The concern there would be is that in some situations, the relationship between an ESU and a non-public school is very good and everything goes well, and there's a very symbiotic relationship. In some circumstances, that's not always the case. And so this potentially would put the way the language is written in the ESU's discretion could potentially at the local level put the ESU in a position to not engage in a contract or not carry out hopefully the desire of a non-public school to engage in a grant application. And so we just want to note that because that could potentially put some schools in some non-public schools in a difficult situation if they have an ESU that for whatever reason, perhaps it's just simply bandwidth reasons that they don't have the bandwidth to assist with the grant application process. So we just wanted to note that. And also just as we've seen in other areas, and I don't mean to throw the ESU coordinating committee out there, unbeknownst to them, but if there's an opportunity here for the ESU coordinating committee to serve as a central resource, perhaps maybe for grant applications, or the opportunity to have a centralized place for where non-public schools can go in terms of the SUCC serving across the state, it could be a potential partnership, and just wanted to put that out there as an opportunity so that the rule may allow for that, accommodate for that, et cetera, because I think that would be a viable option under the statute. But ultimately, again, very thankful for this work, for this effort. I think we've all recognized the increasing importance of school safety across the state for all of our students. And so thank you to Senator Walz, to the state legislature, to the governor, and of course to the NDE for doing the work that it takes to get these draft rules written and to get feedback on that. So I really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Benzer. Is there anyone else who would like to make comments or testify on Rule 58? I see no one else indicating a desire to provide comments or testimony. Dr. Rita, is there any comments you'd like to make in following up? Oh, excuse me. I see Craig Lofquist has raised his hand. So Mr. Lofquist, I will recognize you for 5 minutes. Again, give us your name, spell it, and where you're located.
Thank you, Brian. Craig Lofquist, KRAIGLOFQUIST, Executive Director of the Educational Service Unit Coordinating Council that Mr. Benzer alluded to. If you were to add ESUCC, we would be more than willing to help out. That's just my thoughts off the cuff, and thanks for mentioning that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lofquist. Is there any other individual who'd like to testify or make comments on Rule 58 this morning? I am seeing no one else indicate a desire to provide comments or testimony. Dr. Rita, is there any closing or follow-up you'd like to make to any of the comments already received?
I have no further comment, but I would like to thank Dr. Screda, Mr. Pattern, and also Mr. Benzer for their testimony.
Very good, thank you. Seeing no other individuals and having the closing by the NDE staff member, I'm going to close the hearing on proposed regulation Rule 58. I want to thank everyone for their testimony. I will remind everyone that written comments can be submitted until noon Central Time today at nde.rulehearing@nebraska.gov. Written comments may be submitted to nde.rulehearing@nebraska.gov. I will therefore close the hearing on Rule 58 and thank you all for your attendance today. I will now begin the hearing on Rule 59, regulations for school health and safety. These are revisions being made to the current Rule 59 that the State Board has adopted. We will first hear from Dr. Zainab Rida describing and explaining the proposed revisions. Dr. Rida, you may begin.
Thank you. The following is a short summary of the revision to Title 92, Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 59, Regulation for the School Health and Safety in Nebraska Schools. Start with Section 001.03 with the integration of rule for multiple acts of the legislature, brief explanation relating to emergency response to life-threatening asthma or systemic allergic reaction anaphylaxis, and the Seizure Safe Schools Act were added to the general provisions section. Emergency response to life-threatening asthma or systemic allergic reaction anaphylaxis. Section 006 was added to this chapter, sets forth the requirement for emergency response to life-threatening asthma or systemic allergic reaction anaphylaxis protocol. Section 001.04, Seizure Safe Schools Act requirement. Section 007 through 009 was added of this chapter to provide forth the requirement for training related to seizure medications, procedures for developing seizure action plans, and the content for seizure action plans. Each school must have at least one school employee who has met the training requirement to administer seizure rescue medication or medication prescribed to treat seizure disorder symptoms according to seizure action plans authorized by parents and guardians of students who have seizure disorders and who have been prescribed such a medication. Next, Section 002.03, the definition of approved early childhood education program was moved for the purpose of alphabetizing the definition. 002.12, healthcare professional is a defined term that includes licensure. Therefore, the redundant license was removed from the term licensed healthcare professional throughout the rule. 002.18, school is in session definition. Additional definition was added to clarify the definition of school is in session. School is in session means by period of time during which students are under the direction of school staff during the regular school day as defined by the school or school district, and does not include any period of time during which an extracurricular activity is occurring outside of the regular school day. Section 004, Medication Aid Act Competency Assessment. 004.01, Competencies. In order for a school to assess the competency of staff member to provide medication, the staff member of the school must be able to successfully pass a competency assessment no less than every 3 years. Such competency assessment must consist of a demonstration by the school staff member of each of the minimum competency standards following competencies as set forth in Title 172 Nebraska Administrative Code, Chapter 95, Section 004, to the satisfaction of the healthcare professional designated by the school to conduct the assessment. The definition of minimum competencies is removed because later in rule is stated that the competencies are defined by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services in 172 NAC 95. Leaving the definition in place is redundant and increase the risk that it will not match the Department of Health and Human Services rule. Technical cleanup has been included throughout the update where state statutes language was duplicated. There are 2 technical changes that are throughout the document. The references to statutory provision are changed from RRS to Nebraska Revised Statute. In addition, the term shall was replaced with must or will throughout as required by the previous administration. Other clarifications were made to provide interpretive language. The typographical changes and renumbering are also included within the draft. Finally, the form in Appendix A was modified to address several concerns that have been expressed. And this concludes my summary for Rule 59. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rita. Is there anyone wishing to testify or make comments on the proposed revisions to Rule 59? If so, you can raise your hand by using the chat feature or visually raise your hand for me to see. So Kimberly McClintock, you are recognized. You have 5 minutes. Again, give us your name, spell it for the record, and where you're located in Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kimberly McClintock. It's Kimberly, McClintick. I'm in Omaha. I'm a registered nurse and serve as the school health coordinator at Children's Nebraska. On behalf of Children's Nebraska, I would like to state the mission of Children's Nebraska is to improve the life of every child. Children's Nebraska is honored to work in partnership with the Nebraska Department of Education's Office of Coordinated Student Support Services to support health condition management for Nebraska schools. As the only full-service pediatric specialty hospital in the state, Children's brings a wealth of child health expertise to this collaboration. My position is to work with schools across the state to provide education and training for school nurses. I also provide technical assistance and professional development and connect school nurses with children's expertise as needed. Regarding Section 6, I am frequently approached by school nurses and administrators who seek clarification on the verbiage of this section. As a result, I worked with several children's experts, a pulmonologist, an allergist, a respiratory therapist, and a nurse case manager, as well as several Nebraska school nurses to review and bring recommended edits to NDE. One of the key suggested changes is updating the word physician to healthcare practitioner. This change allows schools, especially those in rural Nebraska, to work with nurse practitioners and physician's assistants to sign the Appendix A protocol. Regarding the use of EpiPen, I suggest supporting and would like to see updated language to include generic epinephrine that will allow schools better access to this important life-saving medication. Additionally, EpiPen is more expensive than generic epinephrine, so this will be a cost-saving measure for schools. To further explain Appendix A, the standing order, otherwise known as a prescription, Schools take this protocol to a pharmacist to obtain these mandatory medications. But unfortunately, some pharmacists don't interpret the appendix as a prescription and will not fill it, which causes difficulty for schools to obtain these required medications. The added statement at the bottom of the protocol clearly states it is a prescription, which makes it easier for schools to get filled. I talk regularly with school nurses and administrators regarding when the regulation must be enforced. These include football games, band concerts, and other school events that occur outside the normal school day hours. For this reason, as the definition "school is in session" is added, it provides schools with much needed clarification as they create and enforce policies. For Section 7, the Children's Neurology team assisted in writing the content of the act, and the Epilepsy Foundation of America has robust training for school staff that was helpful in creating the court requirement for the section. Most school staff do not know what to do when someone is having a seizure. On a personal note, I have a 20-year-old son with an intractable epilepsy disorder, and I know both as a mom and as a nurse how scary it is to watch someone have a seizure. The required training provides information on recognizing the signs and symptoms of a seizure, knowing how to respond, and giving seizure medication that should help school staff with this situation. These updates and additions will help ensure students are physically healthy so they can achieve academic success. It's an honor to connect NDE with children's pediatric specialists to provide schools with up-to-date standard of practice guidelines as they educate and care for students. Thank you for considering the input and recommendations. These are supported by experts at Children's Nebraska. I do support the changes of the regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McClintock. I have Mitzi Cardona. Mitzi, you have 5 minutes. Please again spell your name for us and where you're located.
Good morning. My name is Mitzi Cardona. I am located in Omaha. It's MITZICARDONA. I'm the asthma program coordinator at Children's Nebraska in the pulmonary clinic, and I have been a registered respiratory therapist for 20 years. I specialize in neonatal pediatrics, most specifically asthma. I'm a certified asthma educator and an asthmatic myself, as well as a mother of 3 asthmatics, 1 severe with a history of anaphylaxis. They all attended the Nebraska public schools and are healthy adults. I previously have worked with the Georgia and Nebraska American Lung Associations to support the bills for self-administration of life-saving asthma and anaphylaxis medication, and was a staunch supporter of Rule 59 in 2005 when it was initiated and passed in 2006. Anaphylaxis is a potentially fatal disorder. Its goal is that the emergency response to recognize and treat with epinephrine to prevent progression and seek emergency care. In the immediate treatment of anaphylaxis, epinephrine is injected to reduce the body's allergic response, and albuterol is delivered through a nebulizer to relieve breathing symptoms. I support the clarifications and updates of Rule 59 as written in defining prescribing healthcare practitioner. It's important to understand that many rural health districts will only have the availability of providers such as nurse practitioners and physician assistants, and that these are licensed prescribing providers in the state of Nebraska recognized by the Department of Health and Human Services. Therefore, pharmacies should recognize these orders signed by them as a prescription to be used at all schools. In clarifying, defining school as in session, this clearly indicates when schools are responsible for administering emergency treatment. Schools cannot be expected to carry the burden of purchasing enough epinephrine or albuterol to offset the hours outside of operating school days or have personnel to administer emergency response. Therefore, it is important to educate the use of 911 in all emergency situations outside of the school day, and I support that change. In changing epinephrine or the EpiPen and albuterol to epinephrine and nebulized albuterol. It's important to note that schools are only at this point in time allowed to stock EpiPen, which is a brand name. It's sometimes more expensive and harder to acquire, and therefore changing to epinephrine auto-injector, which is a generic term that allows for ease in filling the order with the most available supply, will be the best scenario. We historically see not only a rise in cost of EpiPens, but also we see shortages in medications recently especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore it's important that schools have access to the appropriate medication regardless of name brand or generic. Albuterol is also an inhaled medication which relieves tightening of the airway and should be administered by a nebulizer as opposed to a metered dose inhaler in an emergency situation, because it's easier to inhale and does not require the individual to successfully execute a particular technique needed use for an MDI. A nebulizer delivers medication to the individual with little effort on their part and is the preferred method in an emergency situation. Therefore, I support this change. And finally, in changing the weight limits from 50 to 60 pounds, it's important to follow guidelines as labeled, and EpiPen, generic epinephrine, as well as the Auvi-Q Epi auto injector, all have the junior labeling of less than 66 pounds or the adult labeling of greater than 66 pounds. Therefore, I support the move to 60 pounds to support the labeling, FDA labeling of these injectors. In conclusion, thank you for allowing me to testify today for Rule 59. This is a vital regulation for our schools. For over 17 years, staff and families have depended on this rule to keep individuals in Nebraska safe, and I look forward to the clarification and updates that have been presented today.
Thank you, Ms. Cardona. Is there any other individual who would testify or provide comments this morning on the revisions to Rule 59? I am seeing no one else indicate a desire to testify. Dr. Rita, do you have any response to any of the testifiers?
No, I have no further comment. I would like to thank Ms. McClintock and Ms. Cardona for their testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you all for attending. I am closing the hearing on the proposed revisions to Rule 59. I'm also closing the hearings on Rule 58 and 59 at this time. I remind everyone written comments can be still submitted until noon today at nde.rulehearing@nebraska.gov. Thank you all for your important testimony and have a great day.